listening to the Latina Leadership Podcast, the podcast made for Latinas by Latinas, with Anjelica Cazares, Carolina Arenas, Diana Ruby, Jacqueline Villa Gomez, and Sonia Ramirez. Get comfortable, amiga, and enjoy the conversations.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Latina Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Anjelica Cazares. On this episode, I am excited to have an amazing person. I'm trying to get through this interview without fangirling or holding on to you for too long because you're a busy woman. Claudia Edelman, the one, Claudia Edelman. Claudia, who are you and what do you do?
First of all, I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I really appreciate podcast media tools, books that help Latinas to get to the positions where they are and leadership. I think that there's so much that we can do and so much that we can learn. And I wish actually I would know what I know now 20 years ago so that I could be, like by far less bruised by coming to the places where we're all coming for. So thank you so much for inviting me. I am Claudia Romo Edelman. I am the founder and the CEO of the World Human Foundation, an organization devoted to advancing diversity and inclusion as a means to achieving equity and progress for all. We're 100% focused on Latinos, where we want to increase our collaboration, perception, and representation.
Awesome. Claudia, as I said, I've followed what you have been doing. And so I got a little bit of insight of kind of sort of where you come. Talk to me a little bit about your past. Before we can say who we are today, we just like insight on the past and where you come from. Knowing what I know, it is in Mexico, ¿verdad?
Okay.
How was life for you growing up? And are you doing something that you thought you would be doing?
So I come from somehow very traditional, but also untraditional family in Mexico. My family is, like full of very strong women that have been the pillar of my life. My parents had three kids. Two of them died when they were really young. So I pretty much grew up under the microscope where, like I grew up and I had the mirror in my nose all the time trying to people trying to see whether I was going to make it or not the way that my siblings didn't. And so pretty much I think that I heard all my life that wow, she's making it, she's strong, as a fact she's stronger than dead. So I grew up thinking that everything was possible and that I was like so strong that I could do anything. And I was in an environment of very strong women that pretty much did incredible things, starting with my mom that was a basketball player. She was part of the national basketball player in Mexico. She was playing
Wow.
for the Panamericanos, going to Cuba, going to Brazil, representing Mexico. And 3 months before the Olympics, she got pregnant, and so she dropped basketball when she had the kids, and then she lost them. She reinvented herself to study economy. Was studied as a grown up in a way with a kid and a survivor
Hmm.
economy. And when she was a really like established economist, then she decided to follow her heart and go into acting. So at 40 she decided she really wanted to be an actress. So you can only imagine like the comments of all my family and everyone else, like, oh, pero tú eres una mamá soltera irresponsable, you have a daughter, how are you going to do that? That's like you're risking security. And I saw my mom pretty much take the grids and the reins of her life
Hmm.
and go through it and go and make that last change into something that she was very passionate about, and go into that roller coaster that was our life for the first couple of years until she made herself an actress, like going through lows economically, highs, and like really, really lows, and do that in a way that was not that she was fearless, right? Like she
Hmm.
was panicking on
Hmm.
doing that, but I saw that with the determination of having someone that was not going to let fear take her own decisions. So she was going to take the decisions, and so she was not fearless, but she was fear free. And that's
Hmm.
something that I've seen in constant ways with people that I admire, particularly in my family, my tia, mi abuela, mi mama, that I grew up in that environment. So I think that, like if you start tracing,
Hmm.
and I think that everybody can trace one or two stories that where you can see and start drawing yourself who
Hmm.
you are and what you do. And one of them was for me that, like, the fact that my siblings died, and I was pretty much able to, like, to grow in an environment where I thought everything was possible and I was stronger than that. And so you can start seeing how I, like, take on life in a way. And the other thing is,
Hmm.
not letting fear take the decisions of my life. And not that I'm fear free, but I'm trying to be at least not fearless, but fear free.
Feel free. I better than dead. I resonate with that a lot. There's a lot to be said in just those words. There's a lot to be translated into that. I think having that background, sometimes people see the success. That's all they see. It's just where you're at today. They don't really recognize, or I mean, you can't recognize. It's difficult to recognize. It's difficult to understand somebody's history. You only know them when you started crossing paths. But listening to that, like, I think it's such a human base to continue. It's such a human base to start that, yeah, we are very much different, pero todos somos iguales. Tenemos, at the end of the road, we all do die. And it's just what we advocate for and what we do here in our life. Speaking of advocacy, let's talk about your career. In your career, how did you start? How did you start the good humanitarian, the advocacy, the this is what I want to do. This is, I think, where my passion lies.
Again, I'm full of stories today, right? But I'm thinking that, when I was a teenager in Mexico, there were a series of earthquakes, not one, but
Mm,
plenty, over a number of days in 1985. And after the second one, um, I recall everyone that I know just like leaving their homes to, one, look for shelter, but the other one is to, like, start looking for your family and your friends and take action.
mm,
And you could start seeing how the human nature, when you push them, they start to self-organize and leadership emerges. And there was this group in the corner that was, saying, like, we're gonna gather all the food here, and the other one's like, let's try to get shelter and blankets and where we're gonna sleep. And another group that I was part of,
mhm,
was sweeping the streets of the
mm.
neighborhoods surrounding us to see whether there were people trapped in those gigantic buildings
Oh my
that
goodness.
well fell off. And so I remember distinctively that it was quite, like, quite overwhelming and quite confusing. There were the ambulances and the noise and everything that was happening there. And then when I was walking, I was the only sort of like kid among all the men that
Mhm.
were in that particular group. So I remember distinctively that I just had to stop. I had to stop. There was something bigger than me that stopped me and make me open my big mouth and start shouting, like, stop, stop, come back. And so one guy of my crew turned around and said, like, what? I said, like, I think I heard a voice. And he looked at me really upset, like, you think, or you heard? And so I looked at him again and started shouting even louder, like, come back, stop, stop. And he came back, and by the time that he was here, there was a voice clearly. So we, both of us, looked at each other and we're like, come back, people. So the two of us started shouting. Two more people came. We were shouting together. More people came until we were enough so that we can start pushing that gigantic wall. And it took 4 hours, at least that was my perception, till we were able to break through. And there was the light coming inside of the darkness. And those were the big eyes of the girl
Oh
that
my
was
goodness.
trapped there with the eyelashes full of dust, that looked at us as in, like, you got me, right? And I remember that was the first time in my life where I felt this feeling of being useful. And that
Mm,
was new to me. I never felt that way before. I never had that feeling of, like, this is, like, this is new. This is something that I just saw her, she saw me, and like then they rescued her. The mother was hugging her. No one even looked at us. Like it was not even important. But for me, that was like an incredible moment of an overwhelming feeling. But also, it was the moment in which I started thinking, like, wait, yeah, this makes sense. My father is all the time saying, like, oh, Claudia, you're so loud, you're so loud. And I'm like, it's great to be loud. It just like did, like, that was loud, that was amazing. And I've been privileged enough for over my entire career to be doing more or less the same, if like
Hmm.
I've been able to just like be shouting and getting more people to shout with me so that we can get the attention of people to things that maybe they wouldn't even notice,
Yeah.
that would have gone unperceived, that would have not even noticed how the invisibility of Latino hurts, how much, like we have to come out of that wall and see, like and be taken out of that and being hugging ourselves. And I think that I've been blessed to be able to also be able to do it being myself, being the loud self that I am, and being able to reconcile, I think, that the piece of my nature with the piece of the passion that drives me.
That's an incredible story. That is an incredible story. I don't have a similar story, but I have a similar story in the sense of like when I was sort of a teenager, we were down a river. It's called the Angelina River. It was down the river, and we took a pontoon boat to a sandbar, and they pushed it up to the sandbar, and we stayed overnight on the sandbar. And when the water receded, we were stuck on the sandbar, and they just kind of like gave in. Of course, it was a few men and a few women, and everybody was much older than me. But when I kept saying, like, I was nervous and anxious, I was like, if something happens, we're stuck here. There's no way. There's no way. There has to be a way for us to get this pontoon boat off into the water. So as we were, as they were just talking, they just kind of accepted the faith of like, oh, we're stuck. And I was like, no, 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 no. Because if the water comes again, what it's going to do, it's going to rise a pontoon boat and push it further into the sandbar. So I was like, I kept explaining to them, this is how we can do it. And they're like, no, whatever. And but they had to go to like the car too and do stuff. So what I started to do is I started to dig underneath. The pontoon boat has these two like it's two little like I don't know. Anyway, I started digging underneath it, and me myself, I think I was like 17. I just pulled it a little bit, and it started to slide. And they looked at me and they're like, they're like, oh, you do know what you're talking about. I think that gave me the sense and the essence of like, when you're not being listened to, you have to kind of show them that, hey, as it turns out, I also have the capability to do more in this life. And that just gave me for me, I just a turn of words in terms of your story, it gave me the confidence that I needed. I didn't give me the confidence to show other people that I was capable of. Me, I knew I was capable. And I was like, I like this. I like this feeling. There's that essence of like, okay, okay. I think I'm gonna be okay. I think all's gonna be all right. But we talk about difficulties, switching it just a little bit. I know you do a lot of the hard work, and with hard work comes difficulties. What has been the most difficult part, either of your career, leading up to your career, or in your field?
Look, I'm a humanitarian worker, right? Like I before moving to the States, I was specialized in war and disaster.
Hmm.
I've been working in public health, particularly on plagues and pandemics like AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. So there's no shortage of challenges, global challenges that were in my field. And I do think that every one of them was life threatening, scary, um, absolutely devastating for humanity unless we control them. Like really, really, I think that all of the global challenges that we have um, are are big and challenging. And I think that the one thing that I learned all across is that those ambitious goals are the real goals. Those dreams are the dreams, and that one cannot do them alone. There's absolutely no way that a single group or a single person can tackle the big dreams that affect millions of people. There's no way that one single government or one single company can solve poverty for
Hmm.
the states, or that we can fix representation for Latinos in one single organization. So, what I learned, I think that it is really impossible and difficult if you think that you can do goals, or or if you try to go solo. So my biggest lesson all through is that as difficult as the goal is, becomes easier and doable and possible if we work together towards that goal.
Hmm.
If we're able to unify forces so that we can, like pursue one or two things that will actually be pushing the inflection point. That's why I'm so optimistic about the Latino community, because I've seen challenges being resolved.
Hmm.
AIDS. We have generations of children that are not born with AIDS anymore in the world. That was unconceivable 10 years ago. But because all of the different groups, the non for profits, the governments, the companies, civil society, academia, got together and decided, let's do one or two things. What are the one or two things that we can do together instead of doing our little thing, so that we
Hmm.
can push together to break through? It is possible to do it. Now, like for Latinos, let's just focus on the one or two things that all of us can do, that all of us want, that will benefit all of us. So instead of fragmenting each other and elbowing each other, we're pushing towards each other and supporting each other. And because I think it is possible, I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, you're right. It is very much right. I think sometimes with not understanding that we make it difficult for ourselves by existing alone in a space where we think that we know better or we know it all, it becomes, yeah, it becomes troublesome. I think partnering and collaborating and talking and speaking and coming with ideas and let others come with ideas also definitely helps the community as a whole move forward. I thank you for that. Thank you for the kind reminder for that, Claudia, honestly. So let's get into a little bit of what you do today, what today looks like for you. What made you, and I have a feeling, what I have my interpretation, but I would really like to hear it from you. What made you decide to start We Are All Human?
Look, I was working, and I was blessed to be working in the, like having a bird perspective of the world, sitting in the executive office of the Secretary General's office of the United Nations, and having access to pretty much the world, right? Like political, a geopolitical situation, the entire perspective of where we were. And look, things looked pretty well.
Hmm.
We were making progress as humanity, maybe not as fast as we wanted, maybe not as, maybe not as fair as we wanted, but in general, I would say you could see the data and the people moving in really in a positive, progressive progress in the direction of progress, except that where there were like one or two peaks out there that were like really concerning. One of them was climate change, and the other one was racism,
Hmm.
discrimination,
Hmm.
xenophobia. And I came and said, like, wait, this is actually taking off. This is taking off in a way that can derail all the other areas of progress of where we are, the education we're getting, the electricity, the access to civic rights, everything else that we have done so much progress on might be derailed if we don't control these, like this narrative of the otherness.
Hmm.
And so, what I really started noticing is that we needed to insert a sense of humanity, on reviving people idea and understanding that we belong to the same human family. If something happens in poor areas of China, it's going to affect the rich areas of New York. And if you're like, we're all interconnected and we're one single family, but we forget. So I created World Human with the support of the United Nations to remind people that we belong to the same human family, that we're part of one. And what turned out to be, like I wanted to do it as a global mobilization campaign towards the elimination of racism, xenophobia, and discrimination, and inserting the sense that is not only with, particularly with the incredible technology advancements that we have, we should at least aim to tolerate each other, to respect each other.
Mhm.
As a fact, I would expect more, moving the needle from tolerance to acceptance, so that we can accept who we are. And I started seeing that the young people were going to be leading that way, because they were not going to be taking and accepting what you tell them they are. They are going to be wherever they are, and they're going to like have that fluidity
Mhm.
of the self, of the identity that was going to be pushing very hard that sense of blocks and molds and stereotypes. And the reality is that that's how We're All Human was created, and that a couple of years in of doing this diversity and inclusion work, it
Mhm.
hit me in the head so many times that the one group that was not, like, the last kid in the queue, the group that was not advancing on diversity and inclusion was mine. And I literally just like took a stand and said, like, look, if this organization is not We're All Latinos, but my community is Latina, and I would beat myself into pieces by, like, knowing what I know and being the fixer that I am, that I don't try to prioritize my own community. This is personal. So that's why World Human is so focused on Latinos.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. I think as we have these conversation, I know there's a lot of conversation around we're not all monolith, and I definitely get and understand all of that. But there still is a conversation that needs to be had, even though among the general group, but even among Latinos ourselves. So I think thank you, because I was going to lead into Hispanic Star. So Hispanic Star it shines during Hispanic Heritage Month. Give us a little bit of what Hispanic Star, excuse me, give us a little bit of what Hispanic Star is doing this coming month.
Well, this coming month and all the way through, I hope that you're going to start seeing it, because we're getting ready to launch a very strong perception changing campaign, where
Hmm.
we're going to be focusing on how do we move the needle for Latino perception, from negative to positive, from invisible to visible, and from takers to makers. Hispanic Star is a symbol, is a brand, and a symbol that represents Latino empowerment, unity, and pride. But it's also a symbol of unity, that we can all be the same, whether you're Mexican, Colombian, Venezuelan, we can all be Hispanic Stars. That's a name that they gave us. Let's use it. And it's a symbol, so that if you don't want to use Hispanic, you can use Latino, Latinx, whatever you want to use it. At least it's a way to represent who we are, which is a 200% of a person,
Hmm.
because when you're in the states, you're 200, even at 300% of a person. You're
Yeah.
100% Mexican and
Yep.
100% American, or 100% Peruvian and Latino. So you're Latino, American, and maybe your country of origin, and it comes from the star of the American flag, and the virgulillo or ñ from Espanol or Portuguese, and that makes that combination that who we are. It represents also that we are stars,
Yeah.
positive contributors to the country, shining. The way that America is made of stars, the flag has many stars in the States, and we're one of them. We're one of the stars of this country. So it doesn't exclude other stars to be, but it also includes us in that universe. So I hope that in the future, when you see these, you understand that this is good for you, that this is good for Latinos. I hope that companies can take it and put it in their, like in their products, outside of their boxes of cereal, in the windows of the stores, the way that you see the rainbow during the
Yeah.
LGBTQ. I want companies to think of that as a symbol to express that they care for us. The way that the LGBTQ community has that, or that the Olympics have the rings, we don't have a symbol, and I think that that's where Hispanic Star becomes an umbrella, a brand, a symbol, a platform, so that we can showcase the incredible contributions that we provide to the country.
Oh my goodness. That is I never noticed that for through Hispanic to the actual logo. I never knew that that's the way it came about. That's
Mm.
amazing. Thank you for explaining that actually. I was like, "Oh dang." So Hispanic Star is going to have a great month coming up. But and I do want to cover some things with you because I've heard you talk about them, and I know I'm trying to. It sounds like I'm going through bullet points. I just want to cover them because I want to get your perspective because I know you have amazing insight. So Still on the topic of Hispanic and Latinas, because you mentioned it very swiftly. But when we talk about Latinas, Latina owned businesses, I know you have a passion for that, and the revenue and the employment we bring as small business owner, like myself, like yourself. Well, I'm not small business, but as a as a person who owns and is able to employ, what are the lessons that you feel you have learned that you, como madrina, to many small businesses, what advice would you give?
Look, I mean, like we are 100% entrepreneurial.
Hmm.
Latinas generate more employment and jobs than any other group in America. Latinas create small businesses 6 times faster than any other group in America. We generate $800 billion in revenue as entrepreneurs, as a community. So we have to start with that, which is just like embrace the power, embrace the numbers, sink on them the way that you would actually just like like put your feet when you're going for a pedicure. Let them sink there. Let yourself be embraced on those numbers so that you know how powerful we are,
Hmm.
how much we have. 1 in every 5 entrepreneurs in this country is a Latino, and Latinas are like the number one entrepreneur of the country. Once we have that, we understand that we don't have to rush into like jumping this, because most of Latinas and Latinos that are entrepreneur, they have great ideas, they just can't scale up. And they can't scale up because they don't have access to capital, they don't have access to financial instruments like credit. We don't have access to a network of people that are going to act as a family, friends, seed or pre-seed round. And if you do that, the likelihood is you're not going to be able to scale. So I think that one of the biggest lessons that I have learned is that when you know your position of power, when you know you're
Hmm.
powerful, you know you can take a little longer to do things. When you start looking at a bank, when you start looking, like, everybody wants us, and if you know that, then you're not going to rush into the first offer that you have. You're going to be able to negotiate a bit more by turning the tables and operating in a position from a position of power. But we need literally to have the access to all the tools that are existing for small businesses to grow. We
Hmm.
need to be able not only to work hard, but work smart when it comes to understanding that networks matter. For the 40% of the success of entrepreneurs come from their networks. So we
Hmm.
need to invest on those areas where we traditionally don't have them. We traditionally don't have family and friends rounds, as I said, of funding. So how are we going to get them if not by increasing our network? So when someone tells you show up to an event, show up.
Hmm.
When you go and start looking at banks, start building a relationship with your banker. When you start looking at ways in which other people present themselves so that you can pitch to capital, do it. I'm not suggesting at any given point in time that is easy, but there is a framework that worked for me very, like, pretty much, particularly because I was launching this foundation almost at the same time that COVID started.
Hmm.
And it was a piece of advice that helped me dramatically from one of my board members, which is the now, near, and next. There are things that you can place in the right order. What is the now that I need to do now, that is urgent, that I have to respond to it because it's time sensitive, or I have to do it because without that I cannot move to the next step? The near are the things that I have to start procuring right now, that I have to start looking at right now, but I don't have to take action on them, so that
Hmm.
I can do that in the next future. So that the next is the vision of where I want to go, and all of that do it in a cyclical way, so that you can start looking at things start looking at things without like jumping into each other or being able to pivot into situations. But I think that that's where I would like to say, like, be proud, be powerfully, yeah, educated about the power of Latinos, so that you can start making the choices that you need, understanding that everybody wants to be your financier, everybody wants to be your investor. It is the absolute desire of the country to make sure that those small businesses becomes medium businesses. And when you know that, then you can start saying, like, okay, let me make my choices. Let me take my power and look at a way that I can do it, and do it in a way that is authentic. Own your Latinidad. Do not hide it. People are We are bringing so much value to America when you know that we're positive contributors to the country, when we know we're stars, then it's so much easier to be able to come from a place of power, to come and be able to be your authentic self so that we can conquer and claim our rightful place.
Yes, I think that's an amazing way to explain it. I'm a 200 percenter all the way too, but understanding that as a 200 percenter, there are double barriers sometimes to overcome. There is the one and there is the other, and then as it turns out, I lead in the entrepreneurship space, but yet I don't get this. I don't get the same opportunities because I don't even know they exist. I don't even know. So
Exactly.
I take my savings and I do everything that I possibly can do because Madre mia, as Latinos, as Hispanics, resilience is all that comes to mind when I talk about Hispanics.
Resilience and resourcefulness.
Mhm.
And I think that I hope that the trend that started on unity and pride continues. We just did our Hispanic sentiment study measuring the sentiment of Latinos over the last 5 years.
Mhm.
And the one flag that I was carrying for 5 years was unity, unity. Let's be united. Let's support each other. And guess what? It's happening. People are supporting each other more. People are every time more sharing the access code, buying from each other, mentoring each other. Our pride is also increasing. So let's keep on that trend to Latinidad. Let's buy from each other, support each other, share with each other the tips. Who are the people that are good lenders? Where are you gonna understand? What do you need? How are we going to create those networks that, like that, of support that allow you to actually move the status quo? So I truly believe that by supporting each other, by not elbowing each other, we're going to make a big difference for each other as entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Claudia, before I let you go, because I have to let you go, you're a busy woman y te tengo que dejar ir. Before I let you go, one last question. Do you consider yourself a leader? And this is a question I ask all my guests. Do you consider yourself a leader?
I do.
Why?
A leader is a person that is able to express a vision and convey a sense of enthusiasm among other people to follow. And I think that if I tell you from the very beginning that story of the earthquake, that is something that I've been able to do. I've been blessed with uh, the capacity to articulate something that I think it's in people's minds and project it in a way that creates excitement for people to follow. So yes, I consider myself a leader, and I'm very proud of, but also very responsible about it.
Thank you. Claudia, thank you so much for talking to me today. Thank you.
What did you think of the conversation? If you enjoyed what you heard, let us know in the comments. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you for listening to the Latina Leadership Podcast, and we will see you next time.